It doesn't begin with collapse. There is no breaking point. No moment where everything suddenly falls apart. It begins with something quieter. A kind of tiredness that doesn't go away, even when you rest. You wake up at the usual time. The house is still. Morning light presses softly through the window, pale and indifferent, like it always has. Nothing is different. And yet, something feels slightly off. You sit on the edge of the bed longer than you used to. Not because you're exhausted. You slept. Your body is fine. But something inside you doesn't move the same way anymore. For years, your mornings had direction before you even opened your eyes. A list waiting somewhere in the background. A problem already forming. A responsibility that needed to be handled. You didn't have to think about it. It was automatic. You stood up and stepped into it. Now, there is no immediate demand. No urgency. Nothing calling your name. And yet your body still prepares for one. Like it's been trained. You stand slowly. Walk into the hallway. The floor creaks in the same places. The walls look the same. The air feels the same. The mirror catches your reflection as you pass. You don't stop. Not avoiding it. Just, not needing to check anything. There's nothing new to confirm. You already know who you are. Or at least, who you've been. You move into the kitchen. Fill the kettle. Turn it on. Lean one hand lightly against the counter. Waiting. The sound of heating water fills the room. It used to disappear into the background. Now, it feels louder than it should. Like it's the only thing happening. You stand there longer than necessary. Not thinking. Not doing. Just, there. You pour the coffee. Sit down. Across from you, a chair. Empty. It has always been there. Nothing about it has changed. But today, it feels different. Not symbolic in any dramatic way. Just, noticed. You take a sip. The warmth registers. The taste doesn't. Your mind isn't fully there. And then the thought appears. Not clearly. Not all at once. Just a fragment. I'm tired. You don't react to it immediately. Because being tired is not new. You've been tired before. Long days. Late nights. Pressure. Responsibility. That kind of tired makes sense. It comes from effort. It goes away with rest. This doesn't. This feels deeper. Quieter. Less attached to anything specific. You set the cup down slowly. And the thought returns. More complete this time. I'm tired of being responsible for everyone. You don't move. Because once you hear it clearly, you can't pretend it didn't exist. And almost instantly, something pushes back. That's not who I am. That's not what I do. You've spent decades being the one who holds things together. The one who doesn't drop the ball. The one who steps in before things fall apart. The one people rely on, without hesitation. Responsibility is not something you carry occasionally. It is something you became. You built your life around it. You built yourself around it. And now, you're questioning it. That doesn't feel right. It feels disloyal. Like you're stepping outside of something you were supposed to stay inside. But the feeling doesn't go away. Because it isn't coming from a thought you can argue with. It's coming from something older. Something accumulated. Years of showing up. Years of handling. Years of being the one who doesn't hesitate. You stand. Carry the cup to the sink. Rinse it. Set it down. Then stop. Hands resting on the counter. Still. Not moving into the next task. Not looking for something to fix. Just, standing there. And for the first time, something becomes visible. Not a full memory. Not a clear realization. Just a quiet awareness. You've been carrying a lot. For a very long time. Without really asking what it was doing to you. You've always focused on whether things were handled. Whether people were okay. Whether the situation stayed stable. You never stopped to ask what it cost you to keep it that way. And now, standing here, with nothing urgent in front of you, that question begins to surface. You lean slightly into the counter. Let the silence stay. No distraction. No movement. Just awareness. I'm tired of being responsible for everyone. This time, you don't push it away. You don't correct it. You don't reframe it into something more acceptable. You just let it sit. Because something about it feels true in a way you haven't allowed yourself to feel before. Not dramatic. Not overwhelming. Just undeniable. And in that quiet moment, something shifts. You are no longer just inside the role. You are looking at it. From a distance you didn't have before. And that distance changes everything. Because once you can see the role clearly, you begin to feel the weight of it. Not just what it gave you. But what it required from you. You remain there for a moment longer. Hands still on the counter. The house still quiet. The morning still ordinary. Nothing outside has changed. But something inside you has started to move. Not fast. Not dramatically. Just enough to let you see something you've been carrying for years. Without ever really seeing it. And that is where this story begins. By midday, the feeling hasn't gone away. It hasn't intensified either. It has simply stayed. That's what makes it different. Most emotions pass if you move fast enough. This one doesn't. You move through the house slowly. Not intentionally. There's just no urgency pushing you forward. You rinse a glass that is already clean. Dry your hands. Open a cabinet. Close it again. These are not tasks. They are movements. And beneath those movements, something is reorganizing. You begin to see your life differently. Not as a series of moments. But as a pattern. Responsibility didn't arrive all at once. It accumulated. Quietly. Gradually. In ways that felt completely reasonable at the time. Someone needed help. You stepped in. Something needed to be handled. You handled it. A problem appeared. You didn't wait. You solved it. Each moment made sense on its own. There was no grand decision. No moment where you chose a role. You just responded. And because you responded, things worked. People felt supported. Situations stabilized. Problems didn't escalate. And because things worked, you were trusted. And because you were trusted, you were asked again. And because you were asked again, you said yes. That's how it forms. Not through intention. Through repetition. You sit down. Lean forward slightly. Elbows resting on your knees. And now, you're not just remembering what you did. You're seeing what it created. There was a time when responsibility felt like strength. It gave you direction. It gave you clarity. It gave you a place in the world that made sense. You didn't have to wonder where you stood. You were needed. And being needed feels like meaning. It feels like purpose. It feels like identity. But there's another side to that. Something quieter. Less visible. Being needed also removes the space to ask what you need. You think about how often your decisions were based on other people. What works for them? What helps them? What keeps things stable? And over time, that becomes automatic. You stop checking inward. Not because you don't have needs. Because they are no longer part of the process. You stand. Walk toward the window. Look outside. Someone across the street is unloading groceries. Another person is talking on the phone. Life is moving. Everyone carrying something. But now, you notice something different. Not what they're doing. What they're not showing. Because suddenly, you recognize it. The same pattern. You were not unique in this. You were trained. Not directly. Not explicitly. But clearly enough. The message was simple. Be useful. Be reliable. Be the one who doesn't create more problems. And you followed it. You became efficient at it. You became good at it. And the better you got, the less anyone questioned whether it cost you anything. You walk back slowly. Sit again. And now, the realization sharpens. You didn't just accept responsibility. You built your identity around it. That lands deeper than expected. Because now it's not about what you did. It's about who you became. You became the one who handles. The one who absorbs. The one who stabilizes. The one who steps in without hesitation. And over time, that became your value. Not internally. Externally. That's how people saw you. That's how they relied on you. That's how they defined you. And eventually, that's how you defined yourself. You reach for your phone. Scroll. Messages. Requests. Updates. Nothing dramatic. Nothing urgent. But all of it carries the same assumption. Availability. Capability. Stability. You lock the screen. Set it down. And this time, the thought is clearer. You didn't just become responsible. You became expected. That's the shift. That's the part no one talks about. Responsibility feels like a choice at first. But expectation is something you live inside. You're no longer deciding in the moment. You're fulfilling something that's already been decided. You lean back slowly. And another layer surfaces. You agreed to this. Not consciously. Not all at once. But over time. Every time you stepped in. Every time you said yes without checking your own capacity. Every time you chose stability over honesty. Every time you prioritized what needed to be done, over how you felt. You reinforced the role. You built it. Piece by piece. Moment by moment. Until it no longer felt like something you were doing. It felt like who you were. You look around the room. Nothing has changed. And yet, everything feels slightly misaligned. Because for the first time, you are not identifying with the role automatically. You are observing it. And that creates distance. And in that distance, something uncomfortable appears. If I stop being the responsible one, who am I? The question doesn't panic you. But it doesn't resolve either. Because you've never had to answer it before. Responsibility answered it for you. It gave your life structure. It gave your life meaning. It gave your life direction. And now, that structure feels heavier than it used to. Not because it changed. Because you did. You sit there longer. Letting that truth settle. Because this is no longer about what people expect from you. It's about what you built your life around. And whether you can keep living inside it, the same way you always have. By evening, the day stops carrying you. There are no more small movements to stay inside. No small tasks to move your attention forward. The house becomes quieter. Not empty. Just, undemanding. You turn on a single lamp. The light settles into the room. Shadows fall into the corners. Everything feels contained. You sit down. Hands resting loosely together. For a moment, nothing happens. And then the thought returns. Not as a question this time. As a statement. I don't want to be responsible for everyone anymore. You don't react immediately. Because the sentence feels wrong. Not logically. Emotionally. It doesn't match who you've always been. It doesn't match the version of you that people know. It doesn't match the role you've lived inside for years. And yet, it doesn't go away. It stays. And as it stays, something else begins to surface. Not just tiredness. Something sharper. Something you haven't allowed yourself to name before. Resentment. You shift slightly in the chair. Your body tightens without you noticing. Because now you're not just observing the role. You're feeling what it has been doing to you. And that feeling is not clean. It's layered. Because it sits next to something else. Pride. You are proud of being the one who carried. Proud of being reliable. Proud of being the person others could count on, without hesitation. That part is real. But so is this. You are tired of being that person all the time. That contradiction doesn't resolve. It holds. And that tension is where something begins to break. You lean forward slightly. Elbows resting on your knees. And a memory surfaces. You're in a room with someone close to you. They're overwhelmed. You remember exactly what you did. You stayed calm. You listened. You made sense of what they couldn't. You helped them move through it. That's what you do. That's who you are. But now, something else becomes visible. You didn't have the space to be overwhelmed too. That option didn't exist for you. You weren't allowed to step into that moment as a person. Only as a function. Another memory follows. You're driving alone at night. The car is quiet. The road is empty. Something heavy had happened earlier that day. You remember gripping the steering wheel slightly tighter than usual. Not reacting. Not expressing. Just holding it. And then you went home. And acted normal. That moment didn't leave. It just never became visible. You sit back slowly. And the realization sharpens. You weren't just responsible for others. You were responsible for suppressing yourself. That lands differently. Because now it's not about what you did for others. It's about what you didn't allow yourself to be. You denied yourself the right to not be okay. You denied yourself the space to collapse. You denied yourself the option to say, I can't carry this right now. And you did it so consistently, it became automatic. You stand up. Walk into the kitchen. Open the fridge. Look inside. Close it again. The movement is familiar. But now it feels different. Because you understand something you didn't before. You weren't just handling life. You were managing your own visibility inside it. You walk back slowly. Sit again. And now the truth arrives more clearly. You became the person everyone leaned on, but no one ever learned how to hold you. Your jaw tightens slightly. Not in anger. In recognition. Because this is the part you never allowed yourself to see. It wasn't just that people didn't support you. It's that you never showed them where you needed support. You trained them. Without meaning to. You trained them to rely on your strength. To expect your stability. To assume your capacity. And in doing that, you removed the possibility of being met in your weakness. You lean forward. Again. Hands closer together now. And the realization deepens. You didn't just become strong. You became unavailable to your own needs. That sentence lands clean. There's no argument with it. Because you can see it. Across years. Across decisions. Across moments where you chose to hold everything together, instead of letting yourself be part of what was happening. You were there. In every situation. In every moment that mattered. But not always there, as yourself. And that distinction is what finally breaks through. You sit there longer. The room quiet. The light steady. And for the first time, you don't move past the feeling. You stay with it. Not fixing it. Not translating it. Just letting it exist. Because now you understand something that was never clear before. This isn't just exhaustion. It's absence. Absence of yourself, inside your own life. And once you feel that clearly, you can't go back to not knowing it. You sit there a little longer. The room hasn't changed. The light is the same. The silence is the same. But something inside you has shifted. Because now, the pattern is clear. Not just what others expected from you. What you allowed. That realization doesn't arrive comfortably. It doesn't accuse you. But it doesn't protect you either. You lean back slightly. Let the thought come fully into view. No one forced you to become this. No one assigned you the role. No one stood in front of you and said, "You are the one who must carry everything." You stepped into it. Again. And again. And again. Because it worked. Because it kept things stable. Because it made you valuable. Because it made you needed. And being needed mattered to you. More than you ever said out loud. You shift slightly in your seat. Because now the truth is no longer abstract. It's specific. You didn't just respond to responsibility. You reinforced it. Every time you stepped in before someone else had to. Every time you absorbed something that could have been shared. Every time you said yes, before checking whether you had the capacity. Every time you chose stability, over honesty. You strengthened the pattern. You made it easier for others to rely on you. And harder for them to see you any other way. You look down at your hands. Resting together. Still. And the realization deepens. You didn't just carry others. You protected the system that required you to. That lands differently. Because now it's not about blame. It's about participation. You were not trapped in this. You were effective in it. And effectiveness can be difficult to let go of. Because it works. It produces results. It keeps things under control. It gives you a sense of identity that feels solid. But what it doesn't do, is ask what it's costing you. You stand. Walk slowly across the room. Then stop. Because there is nowhere you need to go. No task waiting. No problem pressing in. And without movement, the clarity becomes harder to avoid. You were attached to this role. Not consciously. But consistently. You liked being the one who could handle things. You trusted yourself in that position. You felt more certain there. More defined. More necessary. And slowly, that attachment became invisible. You no longer saw it as a choice. You saw it as who you were. You walk back. Sit down again. And now the sentence forms without resistance. You chose this. Not once. Not in a single moment. But across years. Across decisions. Across situations where you could have stepped back, and didn't. That truth is not comfortable. But it is clean. Because it doesn't take anything away from what you've done. It doesn't erase your strength. It doesn't diminish your reliability. It simply adds something that was missing. Agency. You were not just the one who carried everything. You were the one who kept carrying, even when you didn't have to. And that is where something shifts. Because if you helped build it, you can also begin to change it. Not all at once. Not dramatically. But deliberately. You don't need to stop being responsible. You don't need to become someone completely different. You don't need to reject the part of you that has held everything together for so long. But you do need to see it clearly. Without protecting it. Without hiding inside it. Without pretending it didn't cost you something. You lean forward slightly. Hands resting on your knees again. And the clarity settles. Responsibility was never the problem. Self-abandonment was. That line lands fully now. Not as an idea. As something you can trace. Across years. Across choices. Across moments where you removed yourself from your own experience, in order to keep everything else intact. You sit there quietly. Letting that truth stay. Because this is the part you avoided for a long time. Not what others did. What you allowed. And now that you can see it, you don't need to fight it. You don't need to justify it. You don't need to soften it. You just need to acknowledge it. Because this is where something real begins. Not in blaming others. Not in rejecting your past. But in understanding the role you played in creating the life you're now questioning. And that understanding is what makes change possible. The room feels the same. But you don't experience it the same way anymore. Nothing outside has changed. The walls. The light. The quiet. All of it is exactly as it was. But inside, something has shifted. Not dramatically. Not in a way anyone else would notice. Just enough, to change how you sit in it. You don't move immediately. You don't reach for your phone. You don't look for something to do. For once, you stay. And in that staying, you begin to understand something differently. You don't need to stop being responsible. That was never the point. Responsibility built your life. It shaped who you are. It allowed you to carry things that needed to be carried. There is nothing wrong with that. But there is something incomplete about how you lived it. You lived it without yourself. You carried everything, except your own experience. And now, you see that clearly. You lean back slightly. Let your shoulders drop more than they usually do. Not forcing it. Just allowing it. Because for the first time in a long time, you are not holding something for someone else in this moment. You are just, here. And that feels unfamiliar. Not uncomfortable. Just, different. Because your instinct is still there. The part of you that scans for what needs to be done. The part of you that prepares before anything happens. The part of you that moves quickly into function. It hasn't disappeared. It doesn't need to. But now, you don't follow it immediately. You notice it. You let it exist, without turning it into action right away. And that small space changes something. You are no longer reacting automatically. You are choosing. That distinction is quiet. But it's real. You think about the moments where you would normally step in. Where you would take over. Where you would absorb what others are carrying. And for the first time, you consider something else. Not, should I help? But, what happens if I don't do it the same way? The question doesn't come with an answer yet. It just opens a door. Because responsibility doesn't have to disappear. It can change shape. You don't have to carry everything alone. You don't have to step in before anyone else has the chance to. You don't have to absorb what could be shared. You don't have to be the only one holding things together. You can still be reliable. Still be steady. Still be someone others trust. But you don't have to remove yourself to do that. You sit forward slightly. Hands resting loosely. And the realization becomes clearer. Strength doesn't have to mean self-erasure. It doesn't have to mean disappearing inside what needs to be done. It can include something you didn't allow before. Your own presence. Your own limits. Your own experience, as it happens. You don't need to announce this. You don't need to explain it to anyone. You don't need to make a declaration. Because this is not a performance. It's a shift in how you exist. Moment by moment. Choice by choice. You will still help. You will still step in. You will still carry things that matter. But not the same way. Not automatically. Not without yourself. You lean back again. The quiet feels different now. Less like something to move through. More like something to stay inside. Because now, you are part of it. Not just moving through it. And something settles. Not everything. Not completely. But enough. Enough to feel the difference between what you've always done, and what is now possible. You don't need to stop being strong. You just need to stop being strong at your own expense. That thought doesn't feel like a conclusion. It feels like a beginning. Because for the first time, you are not only aware of what you've been carrying. You are aware that you exist, inside it. And that changes how you carry it. The next day doesn't arrive differently. There is no shift in the world around you. No signal that something has changed. The same light comes through the window. The same quiet fills the house. The same routines are waiting. And you move through them the way you always have. But not entirely the same. You wake up. Sit on the edge of the bed. For a moment, you don't move. Not because you're tired. Because you're aware. The instinct is still there. The part of you that prepares. That anticipates. That moves ahead of what might be needed. It hasn't gone anywhere. It doesn't need to. But this time, you don't follow it immediately. You notice it. You let it slow. You stand. Walk into the hallway. The mirror catches you again. And this time, you pause. Not to fix anything. Not to check anything. Just, to look. Not at how you appear. At how you feel being there. It's subtle. But it's different. You move into the kitchen. Fill the kettle. Turn it on. The sound is familiar. But it no longer feels like something to move past. You stay with it. Just for a moment longer than usual. You pour the coffee. Sit down. The same chair across from you. Still empty. Nothing about it has changed. And yet, it doesn't feel the same. Because you are not sitting here the same way. You are not already moving ahead. You are not already leaving the moment. You are here. And that is new. Not because you've never been physically present. Because now, you are not disappearing while you are. You take a sip. Set the cup down. And something becomes clear. You are still the one who can handle things. Still the one people rely on. Still the one who can step in when something needs to be carried. That hasn't changed. It doesn't need to. But something else has. You are no longer doing it automatically. You are no longer stepping in before you've even asked yourself if you should. You are no longer removing yourself, before the moment even begins. You are there. Inside it. You move through the morning. Simple things. Small actions. Nothing significant. But inside those moments, something holds. A presence that wasn't there before. You notice when your instinct tries to take over. To move faster. To fix. To organize. And this time, you allow a gap. Not stopping it. Just, not letting it lead immediately. And inside that gap, you remain. A thought. A feeling. Something you would have pushed aside before. Now, it stays. Not for long. Just long enough to exist. And nothing breaks. Nothing falls apart. The world does not collapse because you paused. Because you didn't step in immediately. Because you allowed yourself to be part of the moment, instead of just managing it. That realization is quiet. But it changes something fundamental. You can still carry what needs to be carried. But you don't have to carry it the way you always have. You don't have to disappear, to do it. You don't have to abandon yourself, to remain strong. You sit again later that day. The room quiet. The light softer now. And there is no urgency to move past the moment. No pressure to become something. No need to return to the version of yourself that never stopped. Because now, you understand something you didn't before. You were never just the one who carries everything. You were also the one inside it. You just didn't allow yourself to be there. And now, you are. Not fully. Not perfectly. But enough. Enough to feel the difference. Enough to know that something has shifted. You don't need to prove it. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to show it to anyone else. Because this was never something external. It was always internal. A quiet adjustment. A different way of existing inside the same life. You lean back slightly. The day settling around you. Nothing dramatic. Nothing resolved. But something, grounded. Because now, you are still the one who can hold things together. But for the first time, you are still there, while you do. And that, is a different kind of strength.